Thank you very much, Colin, and thanks to the committee. Thanks to everybody online. Thanks in particular to Amy, who's involved with Women in Mining and Oxford Mining Club, and now this, and she's a great motivator for people to get involved. So I thank you, Moni. That's why I'm here this evening. Appreciate it. What I thought what might be interesting is the talk is about sustainable supply chains. As Colin kindly pointed out, I'm involved with both lithium and rare earths. And I thought I might be interested to share some of the issues that we're dealing with in creating those supply chains. And the Institute talks about sustainability and circularity. I'd like to focus just a little bit on sustainability and the social acceptance of sustainability. The two companies I'm involved with, Tees Valley Lithium, we're trying to create a supply chain primarily targeting towards the Australian mining industry. Australian mining industry has come from nowhere the last 5 years to produce 55% of the world's lithium. And that's mainly in the form of a spodumene, a concentrate, 5% lithium. So you're basically loading up the world's shipping industry with 95% waste to decarbonize the car industry. So we thought there might be a smarter way of doing it. So we're looking to build a primary lithium sulfate plant in Western Australia at Port Hedland, convert that spodumene from 5% lithium to 50% lithium, and then bring the whole thing to the UK, to Teesside. Teesside has got a couple of advantages, is chemical parks and bad weather. And chemical parks, many of you will know, is the ex-Wilton International, the ex-ICI chemical park. As I was saying, so we're looking to bring a product that's a higher lithium content to carbon, and then capitalize on parks, existing infrastructure, and then bad weather, meaning offshore wind. And as you know, we've got this 2.6 gigawatts of offshore wind at Dogger Bank being connected directly to Wilton International Chemical Parks with an HVC DC cable. So that's the thesis for Tees Valley Lithium. And then Pansana is rare earths. We're looking to develop a very large, one of the world's largest undeveloped rare earth deposits in Angola, and has a considerable infrastructure advantage, namely we're hooking up directly to hydropower, pull that out of the ground in Angola, send it to, in this case, Humberside. And Humber, it's the Saltane Chemicals Park. And then those of you who've been in the oil and gas industry will recognize it's the old BP Chemical Park. And that case, again, there's another HVDC cable from Dogger Bank connecting straight to Saltane. So that's what we're trying to do, is create sustainable supply chains in both those cases. What I share with you is the point of view of three people on what we're doing. And the first one is, as Colin mentioned at the beginning, I'm a strong supporter of women in STEM. And one of the people I've sponsored is Saida Fatima, 15 years old. She's a brilliant young engineer in the making. And I sponsored her through my school to do science STEM subjects. And then when she graduated, I went with her to Imperial to see if she could get a position at Imperial, get a place at Imperial. She got an offer, rejected it, and accepted UCL, which Mr. Mahemius here will be horrified. You know, obviously Imperial's big rival. Anyway, she's gone on to do brilliant things. She's heading up the 250 people student chapter. She drives the hydrogen car. And she was telling me at the end of the first term, when they have the student ball, she got all dressed up in the ball gown, high heels, hair, makeup and earrings, but still went down to the lab to check the engine before she went to the ball, like a proper engineer. Anyway, she's now working as an intern at Red Bull in Warwickshire on Formula One cars, trying to make Max Verstappen's car even better for next year. And she took me out for lunch a few weeks ago and said, I now get what you're doing. I now get materials. I now get metals. And the way she explained it was, what makes a Formula One car go is an engine, a very light body, and a wind tunnel, essentially. But the real magic is in the metals and the materials. And she gave a whole bunch of examples. Some metals dissipate heat from brakes, some materials, some have got light properties, a whole bunch of properties she went through. But the one that stuck out, she says, I now get what you do in terms of rare earths. And she's talking about rare earth permanent magnets. And these are a phenomenal alloy. Those of you who know about them, they'll lift 500 times their own weight. Actually, what makes an electric vehicle go really, really quickly. And if you look at the stats, the fastest Tesla can do 0 to 60 about the same time or slightly faster than Lewis Hamilton's Formula One car. Incredible as it may seem, but the power of those axial motors with the permanent magnets embedded in them creates so much power, and a light body creates that acceleration. So she could see that. She could see the magic of the materials. So the second point of view is my daughter Alex, and she's as a mining engineer like Colin, she's had to put up with just about every time we go out anywhere and a couple of glasses of red wine. I'm talking mining. And so at age 15, I remember we were out skiing somewhere, and she said, "Dad, please, it's embarrassing." He said, "You may as well be a drug dealer." You know, she's just so embarrassed about Dad talking about mining. Subsequent to that, though, she came to London, and she was, not this year, but the year before, she headed up the Marks and Spencer Christmas campaign, the adverts on television. She became very aware of advertising and marketing. And she's now back in Australia, and she now works for Tees Valley Lithium. She's on the commercial side of Tees Valley Lithium. And she makes the point that lithium electric vehicles are cool. Now, the reason why they're cool is because, and just you have to remember that 50% of the buyers for electric vehicles in the future are going to be women, mainly young women. So the attributes they look at an electric vehicle are different to the ones that we look at. And a couple of the attributes in an electric vehicle we would never think of, Colin would never think of in a million years. And the attribute in an electric vehicle to a young mother is you don't have to stop in a petrol station, leave your kids in the back of the car while you go and pay for the petrol. You can charge at home. The other one is, which won't trouble either Colin or I, is apparently celebrities get packed by photographers in petrol stations. So you don't have to stop at a petrol station. So if you don't want to be packed, Colin, have an electric vehicle. So what Alex is saying is she's seeing the properties, the benefits of lithium-ion batteries, vehicles, beyond the actual materials themselves. And then the third point of view I'd like to share with you is the one we're more familiar with. I was at the Canadian Embassy this week, and the Minister Nusrat Ghani was there, and she was talking about what we can do to promote critical mineral sustainability, security, etc. And at the end of the Q&A at the end, the CEO of Innovate UK, that's Indo Mukherjee, put his hand up and said what many people say is, how are we going to innovate away rare earths? How are we going to get rare earths out of supply chains? And that set me thinking. Here was an incredible contrast between what Saida was saying and what industry and government people were saying. Industry and government see rare earths as a nasty commodity that's got all sorts of issues with Global Witness reporting ecocide in Myanmar, all sorts of stories about 700 unlined tails dam in China, all sorts of associated things with the process and processes, chemistry, the processes that the Institute is very familiar with. And yet, Saida couldn't see that. She could only see the benefits, the magic of the materials and the metals, in the same way that Alex could see the benefits of an electric vehicle with lithium-ion. And so that sort of got me thinking, is that perhaps we've let too much criticism around be alive, be around, to survive on these incredibly important supply chains. Nobody in this room would disagree. We were not going to achieve energy transition to net zero without rare earth permanent magnets. They're just not going to exist. Rare earth permanent magnets have been around for the 1970s. As John would know, they were invented in an alloy in the 1970s in Oak Ridge Laboratory, California, part of the nuclear industry, and they progressively found more and more applications in everyday life that we don't even know they're there. Fridge magnets, it's MRI scanners, it's speakers, it's everything through to F-45 jets taking off. They're so pervasive, we don't even know that they're there. You take them away, and we have a problem. And yet here is the CEO of Innovate UK saying, how do we replace them? So my discussion tonight is really around, maybe we should think about the metals and materials that are so fundamental to society and energy transition in a different way. Maybe we should celebrate or highlight the benefits of them in a way that other industries do. So for instance, fair trade coffee. Coffee had a bad rap for a long, long time. And somebody came along and said, you can buy your coffee, but you can be sure of the provenance of it because it's called fair trade. There's a chocolate out there. Tony's Chocolonely did the same thing with chocolate. And you all know there's a long list of commodities and consumer things that we buy that have a provenance branded around them that we'll pay money for. And you know what? It exists in our industry as well. It's called diamonds. You try proposing to marry somebody and give them a fake diamond, an artificial diamond. Well, now you could argue the property is exactly the same, but you're never going to win that one. So we already have it. So I guess the thesis tonight is I'd like to share with you, I think this is an opportunity for us as an industry to celebrate and to create value of the magic of the metals and the benefits of the materials and metals that are created, and create a different value for them. And I'll give you the normal response to this is, oh yes, but we sell to the car industry, notoriously demanding on quality and price. Not so much anymore. There's a car that many will be familiar with, JLR's Land Rover and Range Rover series. They are now selling a responsible luxury vehicle. And the difference between a responsible luxury vehicle and the standard vehicle, I understand, is about £50,000 per vehicle. Per vehicle. In other words, the consumer is willing to pay for responsible, sustainable, however you brand it. There's another cost you can measure as well. Anytime you fly into Munich airport, there's the latest German EV, whether it be the ID3, ID4 range, or the Mercedes range, or whatever. It sits there, and you walk in there. The absolute last thing they want is someone to draw spray paint on it saying, you know, rare earth magnets, ecocide in Myanmar or something. So there is a cost to that consumer if you don't responsibly source, you don't sustainably source. So I'm thinking and I'm wondering whether we can't apply that to us as producers and developers of these amazing materials and metals. So we're looking to try to do that in both Pensana and Tees Valley Lithium. With Pensana, we've entered into an agreement with Polestar. Polestar, as you know, is the Volvo car. All of us in this room, except for a couple at the back, are probably old enough to remember when seatbelts were introduced. Remember, there was a car in Sweden had seatbelts. No other car in the world did it. And you know what Volvo did? They gave it to the world for free. They said, this is what every car should have. And guess what? Every car in the world now has seatbelts. That was a Volvo invention. So they're replicating that. They've now got a car called Polestar, Polestar Zero, and they've got this moonshot goal of creating the world's first climate neutral car. That is, make a car out of raw materials sourced sustainably, as lowest embedded carbon as you can. And we're very proud and privileged that Pensana will be the rare earth supplier to the Polestar, which has got hydroelectric power in Angola and offshore wind and chemical parks in the UK. But watch out, because I think other companies will start copying Polestar, and they'll start putting value on responsibility or sustainability. In other words, there'll be a premium price, which means that can translate back down to those of us that can provide the materials and metals that are responsibly and sustainably sourced. We are also trying to do the same thing with lithium. Those of you know anything a little bit about the lithium industry, it's a pretty brutal industry. It goes through, in a 5-year period, it's been through a huge cycle. But the trend that's emerging is that China's commoditizing lithium. In other words, they'll get lithium from anywhere, turn it into hydroxide or carbonate, put it into the lowest energy density battery it can, as easily as it can. Whereas Europe and North America is going in a slightly different route. And I can talk with some knowledge about Europe. What Europe's doing is saying, no, you can't do that. Actually, first of all, you've got to meet all the REACH regulations. Secondly, you've got to meet rules of origin regulations. Thirdly, you've got to have life cycle analysis, source provenance. The final thing, you've got to have low embedded carbon. One of the things you've got to have from 2027 onwards, you've got to have a portion of your hydroxide and carbonates from recycled material. and then lower embedded carbon. In other words, what Europe's doing is saying, no, we will only have premium quality, premium hydroxide of carbonate into our gigafactories, whereas China's saying, in other words, the markets are diverging. And that's a clear sign of the ability for you to brand or add value to your product, even though it's the same commodity going to two different sources. The final thing I'd like to say is I started, and talking to John earlier about it, I graduated in 1982. And about that time, there was a company formed in a garage in Cupertino, California. And that company has gone on to be a single company. It's got a market capitalization bigger than the whole of our mining industry put together. And what do? They take all the products that we mine, all the materials that we create, turn them into products and sell them back to us in the form of mobile phones and things. And I think what we've got to do is start valuing more the products that we produce that other people need. In other words, stop selling commodities, start selling brands. So I'd like to sort of finish by saying maybe we need to listen to more Saidas and Alexes and ask them what they think about the magic of the metals that they can see and about the coolness of these new electrifications bringing to their society, and see how we can put ourselves brands around that so we can create more value to create more sustainable supply chains. I hope that's helpful.